Friday practice at Monza is over and the fastest driver of the day was future Ferrari driver Lewis Hamilton. But what did we learn? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at the data and doing a data analysis from practice. If you enjoy the video, then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top teams later on, so please do stick around for that. Yep, practice on Friday is over at Monza, and it was a day filled with incidents and mistakes, as the new surface combined with the low downforce led to a number of errors being made. Most notably, an error came from future F1 driver Kimi Antonelli, as he was in the Mercedes in FP1 and lost control at the Parabolica. But he was not the only driver to crash out, as Kevin Magnussen in the Haas car also brought out a red flag. The Parabolica corner looked to be very tricky today, as even championship leader Max Verstappen made a mistake at the final hairpin, and this is going to be catching the team's attention. It looks as though the grip might not be as high as what they were expecting, which could lead to a large amount of circuit evolution between now and the Grand Prix. Speaking of the evolution, let's now compare the fastest laps from FP1 to FP2. In FP1, the fastest driver was Max Verstappen, and let's compare that lap to the lap of Lewis Hamilton from FP2. And when you look at these two laps, you can see the difference the power units have between the two practice sessions. In FP1, Max is clearly running with reduced power, as Max only reaches 339 km per hour heading into the first braking zone. At this braking zone as well, you can see how the circuit grip has improved, as Hamilton is not only able to be faster down the straights, but he's also able to brake later and get the speed off without making a mistake. Hamilton also gets a better exit and uses that advantage all the way around the Curve Legrand. The next area where there is a notable difference is here. This is on the exit of Ascari. Here you can see that Lewis Hamilton gets a much better exit and carries that advantage all the way down the back straight before reaching the Parabolica. Altogether, there is a lap time difference of 9/10 between FP1 and FP2, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to remember that this circuit is majority full throttle and there's not that many corners. So we've seen how the circuit evolved during the sessions, but let's now take a look at the top speeds that the teams are able to reach, so we can get an idea of who's looking fast in a straight line and who might still have a bit more power unit left to give. And when you look at the top speeds, you can see that the order is a little bit different to what we usually see, although the slowest car in a straight line as usual was Alpine. This is actually pretty bad for Alpine, because currently they are running the lowest amount of downforce by the looks of things, and even so, they are still the slowest cars in a straight line. The fastest car in a straight line today was Red Bull, as Sergio Perez reached a top speed of 354 km per hour. However, I believe this was due to the Red Bull getting the perfect slipstream down the pit straight. In terms of top speeds, it is somewhat surprising to see that Ferrari are actually a little bit down when it comes to top speeds. I would usually expect them to be somewhere near the top, especially at Monza. This tells me that there's probably a little bit more to come from the Ferrari power unit as the weekend progresses. Also, Haas were not the fastest car in a straight line as well, which, well, usually they are. So we've seen the top speeds, but now in the midfield, what teams are looking good? Well, I think it has to be said that the top midfield so far is, which is not really a surprise, Haas, as long as they're not throwing their car in the barriers, as Nico Hülkenberg was an excellent 7th place today. This is the sort of circuit that should suit their car nicely. The Haas is typically very slippery in a straight line, and since their recent improvements, they've also become better in the slow speed corners. With this combined, if they can keep the car on track, then there's no reason why they can't be the top midfield team this weekend. But I have to say, Williams and Aston Martin are likely to be putting up a strong fight, as all three teams are historically good at this kind of circuit. I just want to say that if you are enjoying the video so far, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about Mercedes. For Mercedes, it was a bit of a disastrous start to the day. Kimi Antonelli threw the car off into the wall, which compromised George Russell for FP2. But I do have to give Kimi some credit. The 10 minutes that he was on track before the incident was very impressive. He was very, very quickly up to speed, and he had very good pace right from the get-go, pretty much pushing the car to its limits. But it did mean though that George Russell missed some of FP2. We never really got to see any qualifying runs from George apart from one attempt towards the end of FP2, so we can't really compare that. However, we can look at the longer runs of Lewis Hamilton and compare it to Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc, which is what you can see here. This is essentially a 20-minute race run between these three drivers, and you can see here that Mercedes might have been the fastest today over one lap, but when it comes to the race runs, they could be struggling a little bit more than McLaren and Ferrari. In general here, you can see that on the longer runs, McLaren and Ferrari are very closely matched, but a fair bit slower than them is Mercedes. Mercedes do have some work to do overnight in order to improve their car for the longer runs, but it does look like tyre wear might actually be an issue. You can see that Ferrari and McLaren are also struggling for pace as the stint wears on, so tyre wear is going to be higher than expected this weekend. For Ferrari, they are in front of their home fans this weekend, and future Ferrari driver Lewis Hamilton topped the times, which seemed to actually please the Tifosi in general. And also in general, Ferrari are looking alright this weekend. I think they were running with things turned down slightly more than their rivals, meaning that we could see more pace from them when it comes to qualifying. But even so, Sainz was still the third fastest driver of the day, and Leclerc was in 5th place, and as ever the two drivers were incredibly close. Let's look at their fastest laps then to see how Sainz won out by less than half a tenth of a second. And when you look at their laps, they are virtually identical in pretty much every single way, once again showing just how closely matched they are. It looks really like the main area where Sainz wins out against teammate Charles is on the exit of the first chicane. You can see Sainz gets a slightly better exit and he gets up to speed faster than Charles. Also into Ascari, Sainz was slightly more committed, but we are talking about minute changes here. As ever, these two are very closely matched, and it will be interesting to see if they can both push each other forward to fight in qualifying. For McLaren, it is looking as though once again they could be the fastest cars overall, as Lando Norris was only 0.003 seconds off of Lewis Hamilton, and Oscar Piastri was 4th place, just over a tenth away from Hamilton. This is a close weekend between them, and as we saw in the race runs earlier, McLaren are looking very strong. Let's compare the one lap pace then between Hamilton and Norris to see where McLaren lost out by the slimmest of margins. And when you look at these laps, Mercedes does look like the faster car in a straight line, and Norris also brakes earlier than Hamilton going into the first corner, but he does get a stronger exit, and through the two Lesmo corners and also Ascari, Norris in the McLaren was actually faster than Hamilton. But then going into the Parabolica, Hamilton launches the car into the corner and just has the edge over Lando Norris. But as I said, it was by the tightest of margins. In qualifying, McLaren just have to push the limits of their car a little bit more, and then we should see one of their two drivers on pole position. Finally, for Red Bull, on paper, it looked genuinely terrible as Max Verstappen was down in 14th place and Sergio Perez was only 15th. But it has to be said, Verstappen made a mistake during his push lap on the soft tyres. If Verstappen didn't make that mistake, then it is likely he would have been close to the front of the field, and right now Red Bull are not looking terrible, even though 14th and 15th does look terrible. And you can see that here when you look at the longer runs of Verstappen and Norris, and you can see here that actually it is incredibly close between the two. And you can see on the race runs, Max is very much in the mix, which means once again we are set for another very close and exciting race weekend, as it looks close between McLaren, Red Bull and Ferrari. So with that in mind then, what are my top 5 for qualifying for the Italian Grand Prix? Well, in P5 I'm going to go for Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, P4 will be George Russell in the Mercedes, P3 will be Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. P2 will be Oscar Piastri. And I'm going to go for Lando Norris to take pole position at Monza. But those are my thoughts. The question is, what do you guys think will happen? In the comment section down below, please do let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like, and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.